Ethan Price had never been one for luck. He worked small jobs in deep space, fixing old drones or bringing back forgotten cargo for small payments that barely kept his old ship flying. Life in the outer systems was quiet but lonely. His ship, Aurora Steppe, was his only home. Its metal walls hummed with old engines and flickering lights like a heartbeat made of steel. Ethan liked the silence, or at least he told himself that he did. One morning, he received a new contract from the station network. The job looked simple. A derelict ship had been found drifting near a red moon called Helios 9. No one wanted the mission because the area was unstable and unpredictable. The message said the reward would be small, but any working part he recovered could add to the pay. Ethan thought, why not? Maybe I will find something useful. Maybe some old tech I can sell. He repaired his ship's old scanner, loaded some spare food packs, and started the engines. The Aurora Steppe lifted away from the space dock in a slow golden light. Outside the window, the universe stretched like a dark ocean full of cold stars. He watched the curve of the nearest planet fade away, replaced by the deep red reflection of the moon ahead. Days passed until the scanner beeped faintly. The derelict ship appeared on the radar, dark and quiet, with parts of its hull broken open. It looked ancient, maybe 200 years old. Ethan frowned. No ship that old should have energy readings, yet his monitor showed something strange. A weak power signal pulsed from inside. He pulled the Aurora Steppe closer, adjusting the docking clamps by hand since the automatic system failed years ago. When the connection locked, the noise echoed through the small cabin. Ethan checked his helmet and entered the docking tunnel. A hiss of air followed, then silence. Inside, the derelict was eerie. The lights were dim, shining only in short flickers. Long corridors led to rooms filled with dust and broken wires. The floor felt soft under his boots because of layers of frost. His breath fogged his visor as he moved slowly, his torch sweeping through the dark. The air smelled of old metal and frozen oil. Strangely, he felt as if the place was watching him. The silence had weight, heavy and expectant. He kept walking until he reached what looked like a cargo hold. There in the center stood something unlike the rest of the wreck. It was a chamber, smooth and silver, not like any storage pod he had seen before. The surface was covered in strange patterns carved by hand, delicate and beautiful. It did not fit with the crude machines around it. It looked almost like a work of art. Ethan approached carefully. The scanner on his wrist blinked again. It showed movement inside. At first he thought the machine was broken. Then the pattern repeated, a slow beat, like a heartbeat. He hesitated. Someone's in there, he whispered to himself, the words echoing too loudly. He tried to open the chamber manually, but it resisted. Then a small panel lit up at the base. Old but still functional. When he touched it, a faint hiss escaped. Steam rolled over the floor like fog. The chamber opened slowly, revealing a figure lying inside. It was a woman. Her skin was pale, almost glowing against the dim red light from his torch. Long dark hair framed her face. She was dressed in clothing unlike anything Ethan recognized, simple but finely made, almost ceremonial. She looked peaceful, as if sleeping. Ethan's heart pounded. He checked the scanner again. It confirmed life signs, weak but steady. She was alive. He did not know what to do. There was no medical pod on his ship, no advanced tools. Bringing her aboard might be dangerous. Leaving her behind felt wrong. After several minutes, he made the only choice his conscience could allow. He wrapped her gently in a thermal blanket from his pack and carried her back through the silent halls to his ship. When he reached the Aurora Steppe, he placed her on the padded bench beside the control console. The engines hummed softly in the background. For a moment he stared at her face and wondered what kind of person could have slept through centuries of drifting space. He leaned back in his seat, rubbing the tiredness from his eyes. "I thought this job would be simple," he muttered. "Guess I was wrong." Outside the window, the red moon glowed faintly. Inside, a forgotten woman lay between the hum of life support systems and the stars. Ethan did not yet know it, but this single decision would change everything. The small job he thought would barely pay for fuel had given him something far greater, something impossible. As the engines carried them away from the broken ship, Ethan looked once more at the woman's still form. Her chest rose and fell slowly. Whatever she was, whoever she was, her presence filled the small space with quiet mystery. In the silence, he felt both fear and wonder. He had rescued a stranger from time itself, and when her eyelids flickered, just once, in the dim light, he knew that his calm days among the stars were over forever. Ethan Price sat quietly in the cockpit of the Aurora Steppe. The woman he had found still slept on the bench near the console. Her breathing was steady and her face looked calm, almost as if she was dreaming. The soft glow of the ship's lights made her skin look even paler, and her dark hair shimmered faintly each time the engines rumbled. Ethan had never seen anyone like her before. He had run every medical test his ship's scanner could perform. It showed things that made no sense. Her heartbeat was slow, far slower than any normal human's, but strong. Her body temperature was lower, yet she seemed alive and well. He could not explain it. He only knew she was neither dead nor sick. As the hours passed, Ethan grew restless. He poured himself a cup of lukewarm coffee and leaned against the control panel, thinking about his situation. If he brought her to a station, they might take her away for study. He didn't want that. She was a person, not some artifact. He decided to wait until she woke up and could tell him who she was. It happened while he was half asleep. The quiet hum of the engines faded under the sound of a soft breath. Ethan opened his eyes and saw her sitting up. She looked around slowly, her eyes wide but not afraid. They were a deep shade, dark but warm. "Where am I?" she whispered. Ethan stood quickly and nearly spilled his drink. "You're safe. You're on my ship. I found you on a wreck near Helios 9. She looked at him with surprise. "Helios 9? That place still exists?" Ethan frowned. "Still exists. It's been there as long as anyone can remember." "Why?" The woman closed her eyes for a moment. "I see. I must have slept longer than I thought." She spoke in clear, simple tones, but her words carried a strange weight. She looked at the stars through the small window. "How long was I asleep?" Ethan hesitated. "If that ship you were on is really as old as it seems, maybe 200 years, maybe more." For a long time, she said nothing. Then she whispered, "My name is Lyra." Ethan nodded slowly. "I'm Ethan." She studied his face, her eyes calm and serious. "You saved me. I didn't know what else to do," he said with a nervous laugh. "Still, you carried me out of that place," she replied softly. "That means something." For the next few hours they talked. Ethan told her about life in the colonies and the trade routes that stretched across space. He explained how people now lived on stations in small frontier worlds, far apart, but connected through the network. Lyra listened in silence, her gaze distant, as if looking through time. When he asked her about her past, she hesitated. "I belong to a world that no longer exists," she said at last. "A place of light and pride, but also of cruelty. I was part of something that tried to last forever." Ethan did not understand, but he did not press her. Everyone had their own ghosts, even if hers were older than history. Over the next several days, Lyra started to move around the ship. She learned the controls quickly, though Ethan never told her what they did. She seemed to feel energy and movement differently, like she could sense the heartbeat of the engines through the floor. She never ate the food packs he offered. He noticed she only needed to rest for short moments. Then she would sit quietly, watching him work with eyes that caught every small detail. One evening, while they floated near a blue star, the lights of the Aurora Steppe dimmed because of a power fluctuation. In that faint shadow, Ethan saw something that made his breath catch. Lyra's eyes glowed faintly, as if reflecting some invisible light. It was not frightening, just strange, and gone in the next second. She noticed his stare. "Do not be afraid," she said gently. "It only happens when the ship is dark." "I'm not afraid," he replied quickly, though his voice trembled a bit. She smiled faintly. "You should be," but her smile was kind, not cruel. Ethan believed she was no threat. Still, he felt that something inside her was not like other humans. She carried the stillness of someone who had seen too much time. On the 5th day, Lyra stood by the observation window, watching the stars drift by. "All these lights," she said quietly. "When I last saw them, there were fewer. So much changes while one sleeps." Ethan stepped beside her. "You don't have to be alone anymore," he said. She looked at him, her eyes calm, thoughtful, perhaps. But sometimes, even among people, one can be alone. she answered. Then she turned away and walked back to her seat, her movements graceful and silent. The small ship continued its journey through the endless sky, carrying a man searching for meaning and a woman who had already lived through it. Ethan did not know what lay ahead for them, but he knew one thing clearly. From the moment Lyra opened her eyes, nothing in his life would ever be ordinary again. Ethan Price learned to live with the quiet presence of Lyra on the ship. Days passed slowly as they drifted through deep space, heading toward the trade route that would lead them back to safer space. The routine of life aboard the Aurora Steppe began to return, but it was never the same. There was a new calmness in the air, and also a quiet mystery. Lyra spent much of her time in the observation room, watching the stars. She said very little, but her eyes always seemed to be thinking. Sometimes she hummed low tunes that Ethan had never heard before. The melodies were so gentle that they made the air feel softer, though no words followed them. Ethan often tried to start light conversations, asking simple questions to learn more about her. "What kind of world were you from?" he asked one morning as he set down a cup of coffee. She paused before answering. "A world of sunlight and stone towers," she said slowly. "It was beautiful once, but filled with storms inside the people who ruled it. I was not born to power, but I served someone who was." Ethan waited for more, but she didn't continue. He noticed that when she spoke of her old world, her voice always carried both pride and sorrow. He didn't push her to say more. As the days went by, Ethan started having strange dreams whenever he slept. In his dreams, he stood in a wide hall of white marble. At the end of the hall sat a human queen wearing a crown made of silver. All around her, banners hung from the walls, but they were faded and burned. Beside her stood a line of men, faces empty, hands crossed over their hearts as if waiting for some final command. When he awoke, the dreams always faded like smoke. He told Lyra about one of them during breakfast one day. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes looked far away. "It was not a dream," she said softly. "You saw a memory. My queen was real. We all served her once." Ethan was quiet. "You mean you were one of those people?" "Yes, I was one of her guards." Her voice was calm but heavy. "We swore to protect her even after life ended, and so we tried. But in the end, even loyalty cannot defeat time." Ethan stared at her, trying to take in what she was saying. "Then how did you end up asleep on that ship?" "She ordered it," Lyra said. "When the wars came and our world began to die, she made us enter deep rest so that some part of her people might survive. We were placed in vessels and sent into the sky. I should have slept forever. You woke me." Ethan nodded slowly. The story sounded impossible, yet every word she said carried truth in her quiet voice. He looked at her not as a mystery anymore, but as a person who had lost everything she ever knew. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He sat at the control deck, studying the stars outside. The thought of what Lyra had said stayed with him. She wasn't dangerous. She was lonely. She had lived through centuries only to wake in a time where everything she loved was gone. When he finally closed his eyes, he dreamed again of the marble hall. But this time, he was not an observer. He was one of the guards. He felt the weight of armor, the echo of boots on stone, and the queen's calm voice telling them to rest until the new age came. Then he heard a heartbeat, steady and slow, until it became the sound of the engine and woke him. Lyra was standing behind him when his eyes opened. "You saw it again, didn't you?" she asked quietly. He nodded. She placed a hand on his shoulder, light as air. "Those who touch my life often see pieces of my memory that should not have happened. I did not mean for it to." "I don't mind," he said. "Maybe the past just wants to be remembered." For the first time since he had met her, Lyra smiled fully. It changed her face completely, softening the sadness that usually lingered there. "Perhaps you are right," she said. "Memories die only when no one remembers them." They shared a brief silence, both looking at the endless stars sliding by. In the next few days, something else began to change. Lyra started helping with the ship's maintenance. She was quick to learn and had a surprising understanding of how the machines worked. Sometimes, when a circuit failed, she would simply place her hand over the console and somehow the light would come back to life. Ethan asked her how she did it, but her only reply was, "I listened to what it needed." To him, it felt like having an old spirit walking among broken steel and wires. Yet he didn't feel uneasy anymore. There was peace in her presence, like she belonged among the stars. One evening, when the blue light of a distant sun filled the cockpit. Lyra turned to Ethan and said, "You have given me something valuable." "What is that?" he asked. "The chance to feel alive again." Ethan didn't know what to say. He just nodded and smiled. At that moment, he realized the truth. He had rescued her from the silence of death. But she had rescued him from a different kind of silence, the one inside the human heart that comes from living too long without purpose. Neither of them knew where their journey would lead next, but one thing was certain. The ordinary life Ethan once knew had drifted far behind, and ahead of them lay a story, both ancient and new, waiting to be written in the quiet light of the stars. Ethan Price didn't know how calm days could turn into storms so quickly. For weeks, the Aurora Steppe had sailed through the quiet parts of space. The hum of the engines had become like music, and Lyra's presence had turned the empty ship into something that felt almost alive. She helped him repair old systems and adjust navigation routes. She even started reading from the ship's learning banks, fascinated by the world that had grown while she slept. It was peaceful, too peaceful. One afternoon, while Ethan checked the long-range sensors, the alarm suddenly beeped. A cluster of unknown ships appeared behind them on the radar, moving fast. He frowned and tapped the screen, thinking it was a glitch. Then another warning sound filled the cabin. These ships weren't just passing by, they were coming straight for them. Lyra appeared beside him. Her voice was calm, though her eyes became sharp. "Those are not trade vessels," she said quietly. Ethan already knew she was right. "Raiders," he muttered. "Pirates from the outer belts. They take what they find and don't leave survivors." He quickly started the defense systems. But the Aurora Steppe was an old freighter, not a fighter. Its shields were weak and its weapons barely worked. He switched on the main engines and turned sharply to the left, trying to outfly them. The stars streaked across the window as they raced through the void. The raiders followed. Blasts of plasma fire lit up the darkness behind them. Each hit made the ship tremble. One burst tore a hole through a side panel, making the floor tilt. Lyra grabbed the railing, but didn't look afraid. She moved to the main window and placed her hands against the glass. Her dark hair floated around her shoulders in the low gravity. "Keep us steady," she said. "Lyra, what are you doing?" Ethan shouted. But it was too late to stop her. She closed her eyes and the lights of the ship flickered. Every screen flashed once, then went dark. For a moment, Ethan thought everything had shut down, and a strange pulse went through the ship like a heartbeat. Outside, the raiders' engines stuttered. One by one, their ships spun out of control and drifted silently. The whole battle ended in an instant. Lyra stepped back and almost collapsed. Ethan rushed to catch her. Her skin was cold, her breath slow and shallow. He carried her to the bench and spoke softly, trying to wake her. After some time, her eyes opened again. "It is over," she said weakly. "What did you do?" he asked. "I called to the energy in their vessels," she answered. "Machines are born from life as well. I only reminded them to sleep." Ethan didn't understand how that was possible, but he didn't ask. Instead, he said, "You nearly destroyed yourself doing that." She smiled faintly. "I have survived worse." He stayed beside her until she regained some strength. When she could finally sit upright again, she looked out the window at the still ships floating in space. "Those men will live," she said quietly. "I only took away their power. They must choose what comes next." Ethan sat down across from her. "You could have destroyed them completely, couldn't you?" Lyra nodded slowly. "I could have. But I'm tired of ending things. I wish only to protect." The next hours passed in uneasy silence. The Aurora Steppe drifted among the dark shapes of the disabled raider ships. Ethan restarted the power systems one by one, keeping the ship steady while Lyra rested. Outside, the stars shone cold and distant. Later, when the danger had passed, Lyra walked to the viewing window again. "You risked your life to save me once," she said softly. "Now I have returned it." Ethan shook his head. "You didn't have to. I would have handled it somehow." She smiled gently. "You're brave, Ethan. But even courage cannot stop fire with empty hands." He laughed quietly, rubbing the back of his neck. "You might be right." That night, Ethan once more dreamed of the marble hall. The queen stood before him again, her silver crown shining under a distant sun. This time, she looked straight at him. "Protect her," the the queen said in a voice like thunder and music. She carries both the wound and the cure. When he woke, Lyra was standing by his side, silent, watching him. You spoke her name in your sleep, she said. I saw her again, he replied. It's the queen from your memory. Lyra lowered her head. Her shadow follows anyone who draws close to me. Perhaps it is a warning. My gift is not always kind. Ethan met her gaze. Then let me be the fool who stands beside the warning, he said. For a long moment, she said nothing. The faint smile that appeared on her face told him she understood. They continued their journey in silence. The ship's repairs took several days. But the path ahead was now free of raiders. The stars seemed brighter, the blackness wider. Ethan realized that his life had already changed beyond recognition. There, among the endless stars, two lonely souls traveled together, one from the present and one from a forgotten past. They did not know what waited at the next world, or if peace would ever last. But they shared a small truth that made the silence beautiful. Sometimes courage is not in fighting, but in choosing mercy, even when the universe itself has forgotten how. The days after the battle felt strangely silent. The Aurora step floated through calm space, the engines humming softly. Ethan Price fixed the broken panels one by one while Lyra watched him from the corner of the cabin. She seemed quiet, thoughtful, and sometimes sad. The light from the nearby stars made her eyes shine faintly, but Ethan could tell she was fighting with something inside herself. For a while their journey went smoothly. They passed through the empty lanes between trade stations, always moving toward civilization. He could get new supplies, maybe find a real doctor who could help her. And yet, deep inside, he did not want to let her go. The thought of living alone again filled him with unease. One evening, as the ship glided near a soft blue nebula, Lyra approached him. We are close to your world's borders now, she said. What will you tell them about me? Ethan looked down at the controls. I haven't decided. If I report everything, they'll come for you. Can't allow that. You cannot hide me forever, she said gently. They will notice me sooner or later, then we will keep moving, he replied. There must be a quiet world out there somewhere nobody asks questions. Lyra watched his face for a long moment, then smiled softly. You have a kind heart, Ethan, but kind hearts often carry too much weight. He looked at her, wanting to ask what she meant, but her expression told him she had already answered. That night the dreams came again. The marble hall returned, brighter than before. Your sleep is over, the queen said. Yes, your promise is complete. You must choose now. Remain where the living walk, or return to the silence where I wait. Ethan woke with a start. The hum of the engines was normal again, but something felt different.
Ow.
He found Lyra standing by the window, her hands pressed to the cold glass. You dreamed too, didn't you? He asked. She nodded slowly. She spoke to both of us. The choice she offered is real. I am not meant to live in this age. My power belongs to the old world, not this one. He stepped forward. You could learn. You could stay. You've already changed once. You can do it again. She turned toward him with a calm look. You think kindness can defeat time itself, Ethan? But even time must rest. I have walked further than any soul should walk. Still, I thank you for letting me remember what life feels like. He didn't know what to say. Words felt useless. He simply stood near her, close enough to hear her quiet breathing. The next morning, they reached orbit above a small green planet. It wasn't on any chart he recognized. The scanners showed air, water, and land untouched by people. It looked peaceful, like a forgotten paradise. Lyra studied the surface for a long time. When I slept, I dreamed of a place like this, she said softly. Maybe I was meant to rest here. Ethan opened his mouth to argue, but he stopped. There was no fear in her voice, only certainty. They landed in a wide valley surrounded by silver mountains. The air smelled clean and sweet. Lyra stepped onto the ground and closed her eyes as the wind brushed through her hair. This feels alive, she whispered. Ethan followed her and stood beside her. I've become part of it. My body is bound to the energy that once built worlds. If I sleep here, that power will fade peacefully, not as a weapon, but as a memory. He swallowed hard. And I'll lose you. Lyra looked at him with soft eyes. You saved me once. Now you must let me save myself. Do not carry sadness for this. He tried to smile, though it hurt. You changed everything, Lyra. My life, my reason. Nothing will be the same after this. Good, she said gently. That means you lived. She walked a few steps away and turned toward him once more. The wind blew stronger, carrying bits of dust that shimmered in the light. For a moment she looked like the person she must have been, long ago, a guardian standing before her queen. Light flowed from her skin like the soft glow of dawn. Ethan shielded his face with his arm. When he looked again, only a faint shimmer remained on the air where she had stood. The ground beneath his feet glowed for a moment, then went still. The valley became quiet, except for the whisper of the wind. He stayed there a long time. The ship waited behind him, silent and patient. He wanted to feel angry that she had gone, but he couldn't. Instead, he felt peace. Before leaving the valley, he knelt and pressed his hand against the place where she had vanished. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for reminding me what it means to care." When he returned to the ship, he charted a new course. He left no marker, no beacon, nothing for others to find. The world would remain untouched, as Lyra wished. As the aurora step rose back into the sky, the morning light spread across the mountains. Ethan looked out through the window one last time. It might have been a trick of the light, or maybe something more. He smiled too and set his course toward the stars. Ethan had once believed that his life was small and meaningless, measured only in fuel credits and broken machines. But now he carried something no reward could equal: a memory of kindness, courage, and wonder. He had thought the reward would be minor. Instead, he had been given a heart worth more than all the stars in the sky.